This is John 11, from John 11 in the Message Bible translation. When Jesus finally got there, he found Lazarus already 4 days dead. Bethany was near Jerusalem and only a couple of miles away, and many of the Jews were visiting Martha and Mary, sympathizing with them over their brother. Martha heard Jesus coming and went out to meet him. Mary remained in the house. Martha said, "Master, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Even now I know that whatever you ask God, he will give you." Jesus said, "Your brother will be raised up." Martha replied, "I know that he will be raised up in the resurrection at the end of time." "You don't have to wait for the end. I am right now resurrection and life. The one who believes in me, even though he or she dies, will live. And everyone who lives believing in me does not ultimately die at all. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Master. All along I've believed that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who comes into the world." And this is from Revelation. Everything, again, from the Message Bible, everything new. It's chapter 21. "I saw heaven and earth new created. Gone first heaven, gone the first earth, gone the sea. I saw holy Jerusalem, new created, descending resplendent out of heaven, as ready for God as a bride for her husband. I heard a voice thunder from the throne. 'Look, look, God has moved into the neighborhood, making his home with men and women. They're his people, he's their God. He'll wipe every tear from their eyes. Death is gone for good. Tears gone, crying gone, pain gone. All the first order of things are gone.'" Next, I'm going to just tell you basically the story of Numa. I'm going to tell you about her. First, let me go ahead and just say thanks again to Denton McClellan with Idlewild Presbyterian Church, who was formerly with Germantown Presbyterian, where my mom was a member and for many years, and to David Morris here from Hope Presbyterian, my pastor there with Hope Singles. And just thank all of you also for coming. Before I get started, the first thing I want to tell you about Mom, or remind you about her really, is that Mom really, Numa, she really laughed a lot. She laughed more than probably anyone in this room, maybe any two people in this room, except for September. But so this shouldn't be too somber of an occasion. We are, honoring her, but I think she would be thrilled to know that we were, laughing with her, because I'm sure wherever she is now, she's laughing again. So, the life of Numancia. Her mother, let me just tell you, her mother, she grew up in Cuba. I'm not sure if she was born there, but she was from the town of Palma Soriano, Cuba. It's a small town kind of in central Cuba, and her mother, Brigida Sigas, was a school teacher. Her stepfather mostly raised her, Emilio Salmel, who was actually a professional boxer. Cuban boxers were kind of common, especially back in those days. And later they came over to the United States. Her name, Numancia, she was actually named after a small town in Spain. Her father was also a history buff, kind of like mine. And when I was over in Barcelona, Spain, not too long ago, I noticed that actually the main street of Barcelona, kind of like the Poplar Avenue of Barcelona, is Numancia Street. So when I told people over there, people over there go, "Yeah, his mom's name is Numancia," and it was like, "Oh yeah, he's kind of like one of them, But anyway, at a very early age, maybe 6 or 7 years old or something, she actually won the Cuban lottery. She was always really lucky, and she won because she was stopped on her way leaving Monte Carlo, because she was one of the few people ever that was leaving with more money than she came with. And so she was held up there at the border. And also, just in life, she had, I would like buy lottery tickets and things in her name, hoping that would work out. But of course, it didn't pan out for me. But that money that she won in the Cuban lottery as a child was used to finance my grandfather's publishing business, and which, of course, they sold later on, and then, of course, was taken over by the communist government after that. She had a younger brother, about 10 years younger, Esteban Martinez, Steve, and he's not with us today, but he's up in New Jersey, and he's been calling though, and he wishes he could come, but he just was too old to make the trip down here. Really, I'm going to end up, I think, going up there to help him move to Florida here shortly. One of her claims that she always made, her mom being a teacher and everything, they were very educated for Cubans, which was a third world country, really. And one of her claims always was that she had learned to read on her own by like 5 years old or so. And so her parents, she said, I guess she had been watching street signs and billboards and things like that. And somehow, just at the age of 5 years old, she was found like reading the newspaper. And everybody never knew how she had learned how to read. And so she always talked about that, just learned to read on her own. Elizabeth Batchelor, my cousin, came and interviewed her not too long ago about a paper she was doing for school. And, I guess I knew this, but it hadn't really sunk in as much as that even since she was young, really. She had planned to get the heck out of Cuba, really, and get over here to the United States. She knew that was a third world country and that all the opportunity and everything, and stuff was over here. And so all along, she had planned to go ahead and get out of Cuba basically as soon as possible. Of course, she went to, now, while she was there, she was raised like a debutante. So Mom was always like the perfect lady. She never took more than 2 sips of any liquid at a time, ever, until like her last days or something. She was like, I'm thirsty, but really, prior to that, she had never been in the water above her knees in the ocean or anything, because it was unladylike. Also, never learned how to ride a bicycle or things like that. So she had that sort of debutante sort of training, and that just carried with her, of course. And then, of course, she went to the University of Havana and graduated from there, and then came over in '53 to go to the University of Alabama for her master's. And then just looking at her passport, I could see she went back to Cuba for a bit and then came back over and then was teaching at Ole Miss, where she met my dad. Of course, that was a little bit scandalous. She was a teacher. He was a student, and also she was a foreigner, in Mississippi back in the 50s. And also quite a bit older than my dad, although she kept that a secret. We've only, again, since I found only since I found her passport have I really discovered her true age after all this time. Okay, and so then of course she went with my dad. My dad went on to law school at Vanderbilt, and so she lived with him in Nashville and elsewhere. And then finally they moved to Memphis in a small apartment. She taught at Hutchinson schools, taught Spanish there, of course. And then after I was born, my dad encouraged her to, to quit working and just be a full-time mom and housewife. When by the time I was born, she had miscarriages. I don't know how many, several, and I think another after. And so, and when I was actually, this is funny, another friend of mine has a similar story, Rudy Howard. You may know him from Hope Presbyterian or Luke 4:18 Ministries. He kind of tells a similar story. And when Mom was pregnant with me, I was actually diagnosed as a cyst. And so, turned out to be me. Surprise. Anyway, I guess that happens. Like I said, I know some other people that happened to, but maybe, medicine, many of you know about, alcoholism's been an issue for me and in my family. As it turned out later on, the doctor that delivered me, he also was an alcoholic. So against all odds, I made it. And Well, and then after that, really, I mean, there was a period there. I don't know if you've seen the Wonder Years television show, but that's a reality. There was some like slice of life there in the 60s where it was like the perfect time for a kid to grow up, you know, riding bicycles in the suburbs, and everything was pretty safe, and, you know, things went, you know, although, you know, I mean, I'm glossing over things, obviously, but it was you know, Dad was doing well. He was recognized as an excellent attorney, and business was going good. And, you know, they had their social activities. And I don't know. I mean, it was kind of a wonder years period to a great degree there for many years. There's nothing, you know, there was nothing dramatic or anything happen, and just a great family together, really, the three of us. And let's see. What else happened then? Well, when I was still pretty young, and I remember it was a big event. One of the biggest events was when Mom became an American citizen. You know, for a Cuban to become an American citizen during the Cold War, you know, in the 50s was a deal. And so it was quite a challenge for her. Of course, as many of you know, her English was never the greatest. And so she always had that very thick accent. People couldn't understand what she was saying half the time. They'd just say, "Yes, Mrs. Batchelor," you know, and that kind of thing. But, and then they, you know, she, let's see what else. You know, she loved to, I remember at the old house in Parkway Village, you know, we had one of those console stereos, and she played the Latin music. Some of it was playing here before we started the service today that I brought, and she would dance and party, and it was just, you know, she tried to teach Dad and I to dance. Never really panned out for her. They called my dad's step the Eupora Shuffle, as I recall. But I remember us watching, you know, the childhood, you know, making pies with her at home, and we watched Jack LaLanne and Fantastic Features, you know, on TV. And one of the things she taught me and Dad was to travel. You know, I don't think my dad would have ever traveled the world in places like he did if it hadn't been for my mom. And of course, she, along the way, they bought the condo in Acapulco that she owned down there for years, and I traveled down there a few times, and so did they. And you know, my dad built that beautiful house for her, and they would travel down into Mexico, and he would buy all the furnishings and the art and everything to go in that house. And so she loved that house. We have like a photo album of the house, seriously. And so they loved that house, and they had big parties over there. And of course, you know, that was when we had moved to Germantown and joined the Germantown Presbyterian Church. So, you know, shortly thereafter, of course, I rebelled and ran away to Colorado to be a ski bum and everything. But during that time, you know, Mom was very independent, and she went off and traveled. Some of y'all saw the pictures earlier. She traveled to Monaco and other places on her own there, and was just huge on that. And then she started up a tutoring service for some of the MUS kids came, a Spanish-French tutoring service, was doing that. Her and Dad helped plant a Faith Presbyterian Church also along the way. They worked with that. And then the house, you know, when they first built that house, I mean, they had the Shelby County Bar Association parties there, and there would be 300 people or 400 at these huge events. It was great for me and the kids, you know, get to shoot the fireworks and things like that off. Later on, though, you know, after the house was used a lot for various church groups and Young Life meetings and things like that. Of course, Mom was really never the same after Dad's sudden death. This is like about 15 years ago now, I think. And, you know, he never was in the greatest physical condition, and it caught up with him. And, of course, we probably all thought he had a little while longer to go, and I'm sure she caught her off guard. And, you know, that really kind of set off what many of you have heard me call over the years the Mom Project, really. And she was, you know, in bed for a month or two then, and that was a terrible time for me. I was drinking, and I was thinking, I thought of myself as the prisoner of Germantown, you know. It was like Mom didn't want me to leave the house or she'd worry about me, but I couldn't really have anybody over either. And so I would tell her something like I was going down to the grocery store, you know, and then I'd go to the bar. And then Mom would call the police and tell them I was missing. So that whole era didn't really go all that smoothly. And really, that's kind of what brought me. One night, I was pretty early in the evening. I was cut off at a bar, and they said, no more drinks. And I just felt so humiliated, you know, by that was it. I never drank again. I called my friend Knapp. He took me to meetings the next day, and that's the last time I've touched the alcohol. And so, a big part of, this is a big part of Mom's story is what happened to me as a result. It was like she kind of raised me twice. She raised me as a child to like a teen, to a rebellious teen, but then, in her illness in later life, she raised me from, a boy to a man, to a Christian man. So it's an amazing thing to be raised twice by your mom. A bit painful, though, I must say. Okay, well, and speaking of that, I was terribly resentful about the situation. Dad had died and left me with this high-maintenance mom, And so I kind of thought he'd done it on purpose to some degree, you know what I mean? And many of you here have quite a bit invested in Mom over the years. People that were in my small group at church and people that have known me all this time since I've been back in Memphis, have heard me complaining and seen me traumatized and running around and all the different things that have happened. And so a lot of you really know a lot about these last 10 years with Mom and really seen me transformed by it. One of the things that she used to do, more recently, and we talked with some of the people about this earlier, was that she used to, start calling me like 10 times a day. And one of the most commonly she always needed bananas. Mom loved bananas. Dad grew banana trees. We gave the relatives banana trees for gifts, things like that. And so she would always call me, Pancho, Pancho, I need bananas. Bring me bananas. Anyway, so the vanilla wafers also, she loved her vanilla wafers, somebody reminded me. But, she didn't really need the bananas all that much. She just wanted me to come over there. But each week during the small group meeting, we'd hold hands at the end of the meeting and pray, and they could hear my phone vibrating bzz, bzz, every time. And it was like everybody in the group knew that's Mom needing bananas, right? It's Pancho's mom needs bananas. Every Tuesday night, or whatever. Okay. But anyway, it was a wonderful thing to reunite with her in these last years and just how my life was transformed by serving her, I don't know why I did it exactly. I guess it was the Holy Spirit. People have told me, that other people might not have stepped up to the plate on this. And, I didn't do as good a job as I could have. It was an imperfect job. But I guess just I did the best I could, for who I am. Mom has now died. What Peterson, the translator of the Message Bible, what he says is called, what he calls the first death. The first death. Now, I don't know exactly how things work, really, but I do know that either she has been judged or she will be being judged, and as great as Mom was, she's a three-dimensional person. She had her flaws. She had a temper, for example. We've all seen Ricky Ricardo cussing in Spanish. Well, there you go, Imagine a day at my house there. So, So, even if she had my dad as her attorney in heaven or at the judgment, she's guilty. Even one of the greatest attorneys of Memphis would not be able to get her off from the things she's done. She is guilty, and as are we all. But fortunately, Jesus already paid the fine. She was found guilty. The fine's already paid. The sentence has been served. And Jesus has died in her place. And so we know that, this Jesus, she's up there with Jesus. She didn't have to incur or experience what Peterson calls in the Message Bible, he calls it the second death, or lake fire, he calls it also, lake fire. At this point, if anybody else has a story they'd like to share or just something they'd like to say about Mom, this would be the time. Does somebody have something? memory.
Thanks a lot.
That's Charles Crawford. He was one of the neighborhood kids that I grew up with there in Germantown. I mean, again, it was during that Wonder Year period. We vandalized the horse show grounds and the high school and things like that. It was great. Anybody else got something? Let me just say that now let's see. I just want to say that what Charles is saying, not the part about being proud of me, but the part about Mom looking down and all that this is not a fairy tale. This idea that people are still alive after they've died. This is not something, I know in the past, I was very agnostic. I probably leaned toward the idea that all these religions were kind of the same or equally as good or something like that. And just through my own experience now, and just having, spent these last decade or so, really investigating on my own the Bible and trying it and just learning everything I can about it, I find that I can't help but know that it is 100% correct. The story that's written in here, it happened exactly the way it's written in here. And so that includes all the stuff Jesus said about, we're not, there's a life beyond this life. From Mom's perspective right now, the life that she had, even though it was 90 years long, was like a dream or a wisp of smoke that was just very short compared to what she's currently experiencing. And so from her perspective, I'm going to kind of speak on her behalf right now and just say that what she would want for each one of you in this room is just to have, the best possible life you can, the balance of your life here on this earth, and also to see her. Be sure that you're going to see her later on. That's what she wants. She wants to be partying with us, listening to Latin music up in heaven, everyone in this room. And so that would, from her current perspective, that would be the most important thing for her. And so what I have done on her behalf is I've kind of accumulated a bunch of message Bibles, and they're out there on the shelf. And if, I just have this fear that somebody in this room either doesn't have a Bible at all, or they just have like a dusty old King James Bible sitting on the shelf somebody gave you in 3rd grade in the Wonder Years, and you're never going to look at it. And so this message Bible by Eugene Peterson translated it, it's written like a conversation between friends. This particular paperback version, it doesn't even have verse numbers. It's designed to be read like a novel. And so please, there's ones out there. There's Through the Bible in a Year versions out there. Paperback, there's a couple different versions. Just grab one on your way out on Numa. That's what she would want more than anything, was you to spend some more time in the Bible. Okay, and so I think that pretty much wraps it up. Let's see, I've got something here. Oh, let me mention this. When I was, during these last years, I tried to make the most of it. I was trapped in Memphis, which wasn't my favorite thing, really, and the scenario. But, I tried to make the most of it. And one of the things I've done, with my spiritual walk was I did some missionary work. And I was able to get away for a few weeks at a time, even, and leave Mom for that period, although it was kind of stressful because I was afraid something would happen. But, when I went to Indonesia, for example, Lee and Kyle Cromwell are here, and Lee kept an eye on things for me here while I was all the way on the other side of the world with them. And those two, that's who I put in the obituary, as if you wanted to make a memorial in Mom's name, she would like it to be to the International Friendship Summits. And I'd love for you to meet them afterwards. Just say hi to them. The guy with the beard back there, scruffy-looking guy. Looks like he might be going to Afghanistan soon or something. But they go to the very remote parts of the world, and they're the real thing, and it's just a great thing. And Mom would love them, would love that to help them. And then again, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and we've got some more to go, but just thank you guys too. And on Mom's behalf, I'm going to say hasta luego, see you later, and vaya con Dios.